Teaching is hard, and oftentimes it isn't what happens in the classroom that makes the job difficult. It's what happens before and after school, during passing periods, at lunch, in meetings, or in our lives outside of school that challenges our ability to stick with the profession. Teacher Guard is committed to focusing on making teaching sustainable and enjoyable. We want to make the rewards of the profession seem more attainable and the challenges more bearable. Our mentorship model pairs teachers with consistent daily support from a peer educator. Through Teacher Guard's four sustainability principles, we will walk the challenging times with you and allow you to enjoy the wins and celebrations that come with this beautiful profession. See teacherguard.net for more information and to explore how you can join our community of educators today. We hope you enjoy today's podcast. All right, welcome back. Excited to have Ivan Lee joining me on today's episode. How are you doing, Ivan?
I'm doing pretty good. I had a pretty long day at work, but I'm feeling energized. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Excellent. I really appreciate your time. I know the last thing you want to do sometimes after work is, talk more about work, but really appreciate you being here. Let's start off by just giving the folks a little background into you. What brought you to teaching? What do you currently teach? Where do you teach? Anything you want to share about yourself?
Of course, yeah. So my name is Ivan Lee. I'm currently in my second year of teaching. I'm teaching at Del Mar High School right now in San Jose, California, and I am teaching chemistry and physics. And I think for me, the thing that got me into teaching was I kind of already had a feel for it because I did a lot of tutoring before. But when I graduated, I was working a corporate job for 2 years. It was work from home. And I realized that I just really wanted to be in the business of people. And so I guess I made that pivot.
Yeah. And so now you're in your second year of teaching, and with first year teachers, obviously the challenges range, right?
Yes.
From many different things depending on your context. So in your first 2 years of teaching, um, instead of just focusing on the challenges, let's focus on what has been challenging for you, but also what has been extremely rewarding or successful for you.
Okay, let's see. I think something that has been very, very challenging is kind of understanding the context in which I teach. I'm not teaching in the same community that I grew up in. And so I think understanding the students, where they're coming from, what they're good at, what they kind of struggle at, has been kind of difficult, especially because sometimes I think a lot of teachers go into the classroom thinking that every student's experience is similar to what they grew up with. And so I guess coming to terms with the reality and figuring out ways to adjust to it has been very challenging. And then I think something that is really rewarding is at the same time like getting to know these students and where they come from. And then like I mentioned, like getting to know like where their strengths lie, what they feel confident in, what they're passionate about. All of those things are just really great joys that I experience, I think. It feels like I'm getting to know a community, I'm getting to know these young people, and it's kind of broadening the way that I think about things. So I think that has been definitely really, really rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, that human connection, right? A
Yes.
reminder of why we are in the profession that we are, and being able to establish those connections with students. And I think oftentimes that can kind of get us through some of the more challenging aspects of the work,
Yes.
right? So,
Yes, for
in
sure.
your context, is this a position in which you feel like you're going to continue for a while at your particular site? Are you looking at teaching different subjects, teaching at a different school eventually? Kind of what are your long-term visions here?
I think for me right now, I'm definitely planning on staying. I really love my school site. I think the students are wonderful, they're amazing. And I think that I have a lot of support from admin. And I also think that I really love the direction that the school is going in. Like what the priorities are when we have staff meetings, like what are the projects that we're working on together as a team. I really align with that vision, and so I definitely see myself staying here for at least the near future.
Yeah, and that community that you reference is something that is so important. That sometimes first, second, third year teachers they may struggle to find that because I'm assuming, you probably went through a credentialing program where you had that community, right? Other people getting their credentials at the same
Yes,
time as you
yes.
are. You
Hmm.
have collaboration with professors. Did you find it that once that credentialing year ended, did you find like you were missing that kind of community and collaboration?
Um, I would say so for sure. Um, I think I was really lucky because one of my close friends teaches English at my school also, so we
Hmm.
ended up in the same school site. But I will say, like, within my science coworkers, I think I was a little bit culture shocked when I first started. Because I think for some people, like, they just kind of come in, clock in, do their job, and they're not, like, super, super excited to make changes because it brings about more work for you. And I think that that was really shocking to me to not be around people who are so gung ho, and like excited to change things and excited to take on the work that we wanted to do.
Hmm.
But I do think I found that now. I guess like for better or for worse, like you kind of come to terms with like what is realistic, in terms of like making a bunch of changes and taking on a bunch of work for yourself. And I think like once I started to come to terms with that, I was starting to understand that it wasn't that my coworkers didn't want to do anything. It's just that they have constraints like their lives. And then being more empathetic for that, like I think I was able to find more community, and a lot of coworkers that I could trust and bounce ideas off of and stuff like that.
And do you feel like that kind of organically found you, or were you actively searching for that because you knew that's kind of what you needed, maybe to fill your cup or to just, keep going?
Yeah, I think I was definitely looking for it. Um, I think I was really fortunate that my coworker that I worked the closest with, we planned together for two different preps, for chemistry and for physics.
Hmm.
I think we align a lot in what we think is important. And I think that the skills that we both bring to the table are really compatible with one another. And so as soon as I recognized that, I thought it would be really important to kind of build trust with this coworker. Um, and so I definitely did seek it, but I think that the opposite is also true. That I think she was also looking for somebody that she could collaborate with and trust in that way. So I guess it just worked out for the both of us.
Yeah, and to your earlier point, I feel like that energy that new teachers bring, oftentimes we think that's not matched by veteran teachers who may just kind of settled into their ways and, maybe are just looking to get by. But oftentimes that's not the case. Oftentimes I think that spark that new teachers bring kind of can reignite that initial passion that maybe some veteran teachers had and give them somebody that they can speak to in constructive ways versus just talking about the work in a manner that feels like we're complaining or just chatting about the difficulties in teaching.
Yeah.
And that's really the bridge that the teacher guard program tries to bring. So I haven't given you any context about it because I kind of wanted to get your initial impression on what you think of the program and how you feel it could affect not just newer teachers but all teachers in the profession,
Yeah.
and their sustainability within the profession. So the main tenet of the program is peer-to-peer mentorship, right? So you have somebody that's meeting with you once a week. But what I think makes this particularly a unique program is that you have that meeting, but then a Google Doc is created, and we are committed, or the mentor is committed, to every day, either in the evening or in the morning, going in and checking in on the what we call dynamic journaling reflections of the mentee. So you as a teacher finish your day and maybe there were things on your mind, but today's not your coaching session day. So what you do is you go into the document, you write them down, you get a response, and maybe in the morning before going to work, you read it. And all of a sudden, you feel a little better going into work, right? Because you got things off your mind before you went to bed. You got some feedback, some advice going into work the next day. That sustainability of the mentorship is what I think is supportive. Again, not just for new teachers, but for all teachers. So, what are your thoughts on that as a tool that you would potentially be able to utilize as a new teacher, or that even a veteran teacher could use?
Yeah, I see like a few things that I think are pretty important. I would say the first thing is like that connection. It seems like you will always have access to somebody who will maybe not understand exactly what you're going through because contexts are all really different, but they have a
Hmm.
pretty good idea. And so to just have somebody that you know is like also like in your alley, in your corner is really helpful. And I'm thinking about like so many days that I just came home and I was like, I can't believe I have nobody to talk to about this because I feel so many strong feelings about what just happened. And then sometimes like you feel like when you're in a classroom, you're like, you're like the only adult in the room. So sometimes it could feel a little bit isolating. Um, so I think just like knowing that somebody is going to hear you and your experiences can be very validating. Um, and I also feel like for a veteran teacher also, like it might be helpful for them to, like still have things that they want to discuss. I think a lot of times like when we do things for a long time, we forget to be curious about things or we forget to like, want to dig deeper into something. So I think that as a tool that I think that it could definitely reignite like somebody's interest and curiosity.
Yeah, and I do think it's that piece of why people get to the point where they consider leaving the profession, or sadly when they do. It's the accumulation of those days that you just mentioned, right? The idea of like, I'm bringing with me everything that I absorbed from work today. I'm not going to transmit it to the students because it's not their job to listen to my worries. But then if you get home, you may not want to talk to family if there's family at home, or if there is, and if there isn't family, then you have no one to speak to it about. So over the course of days, weeks, months, what seems like small issues repeated over times. It's like what do they call it? Death by a thousand paper cuts,
Mm-hmm.
right? That adds up to the point where it feels like this is not sustainable. This is not a sustainable profession, and I think that that is what I would argue is one of the strongest factors against keeping teachers in the profession. That idea of isolation, of you have to manage your own classroom and you're on your own, kind of thing. So, again, for someone like you, it seems like you've been fortunate in being able to have the community that you do at your school. But for those who maybe are still searching for that or are navigating across schools and feeling like you're starting over every year in search for that, it can be it can be very draining. And so I'm wondering from your point of view, when you think about this type of mentorship, do you find when you have things to talk about that are on your mind that you always need a response, or do you just sometimes feel like you just need someone to listen? Like you just need to offload what's in your brain. You don't need any advice right now. You just want it out of your head so that you can enjoy your evening or your morning or your afternoon.
Um, I think for me, um, I'm like a I'm an external processor, so I could like dig deeper and deeper into something like if I have the chance to. I think something that helps a lot is we don't have to talk about it for a long time, but I just want to make sure I can get all my thoughts out.
Hmm.
And having a conversation for me, or like at least having a response, is an easier way for me to kind of dig deeper into my own thoughts. Um, so I think for me personally, I would like having a response just so that I can bounce off of that a little bit more.
Yeah. And again, I think sometimes, I'm not sure if you've participated in other coaching programs or sometimes when you clear your credential, you get some form of mentorship. I found that, whether you have monthly, weekly, biweekly sessions with folks, a lot happens in one day at a school. And so waiting a whole week to be able to talk about something with someone, before we know it, our mind has already compartmentalized it and we think we solved it, but it's still living in the back of our minds, right? So that immediate feedback I think is really important when it comes to those mentorship relationships, to ensure that again, in real time, we're brainstorming, talking, discussing, solving some of the things that come to mind. There are four tenets to the Teacher Guard program, and I'm curious to get your feedback on as many as we can today. The first one, and the one that I think resonates with me the most, is this idea of embracing uncertainty. And I think as a new teacher and as a veteran teacher, um, we are constantly trying to fill in the gaps, right? Because we only get a small piece of the puzzle at our school. We don't know what our administrators are thinking. We don't necessarily know what our colleagues are thinking all the time. And yet our brains are really good at filling in the pieces with assumptions, right? So I'm really curious about your take on that, about the idea of, are there times when you're not sure about something and your brain kind of fills in the details and later on you're like, oh, I was wrong about that, or that person didn't think that, or that person had a whole different impression that I had, and all of a sudden I was kind of spiraling for no reason. Is that something that you faced as a new teacher?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think at my school, my students struggle for a lot of different reasons. Like, not just academically, like sometimes they struggle like for other reasons as well. I'm sure it's the same in every other school too. But I think for my students, a lot of times, like when I see like lack of engagement, for example, in my first year, I immediately took it personally. I was like, okay, I did something wrong. I was teaching the lesson poorly, something like that. And then, just to find out later, like, this is what their life is. This is what they've been dealing with at that moment. And so it kind of makes sense for them to not be engaged like that?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that, like, a lot of times for me, like, when I try to fill in the gaps, it turns into something that's personal. Like, I did something wrong. But I think I've found a lot of comfort this year just having a little bit more experience. And some of the students, like, I looped with them, so I got them also as sophomores, like, just to be more open minded about, like, there could be a lot of things happening and I can focus on what I can control. Um, but at the end of the day, like, my the amount of approaches that I can try, like, I can try them more like later on, but like my response in the current moment is a little bit limited and I can only do what I can do at that moment. So I think like reframing my mindset to be more okay with uncertainty, like you're saying, has been really, really, really helpful in my day to day. Yeah, so it definitely happens to me a lot. Even now, like with my mindset shifting, like it still is something that's pretty hard.
Yeah. Well, and it goes against what we're supposed to be doing all day as teachers, right? We are the ones who have the answers. We need to be able to deliver information. And so to all of a sudden have to shift that to like, well, I also have to be okay with not knowing some things and
Mm-hmm.
operating in that uncertainty is scary, but it does bring you a peace of mind to just feel okay saying, I don't know. And I'm not going to assume something and act on that and then feel like I'm risking being wrong later, and then I went through anxiety or nervousness or apprehension for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the again principles that I think is if teachers, both novice and veteran, can master that, it's really huge for them and for
Yeah.
the community around them.
I will also say, like, I feel like as a first year teacher, that's like every single day for you is uncertainty.
Yeah.
I think even like because sometimes you'll be doing something, you're like, I actually don't know if this is gonna lead to something positive,
Hmm.
or like I don't know if the seeds that I'm planting now will actually show up later. And so like yeah, I do think it's really important to embrace it early on. I think especially as a new teacher, like there's so many things you just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you say that as a new teacher, geez, as a veteran teacher, right? Things change all the time. Requirements are changing all the time in the classroom. Standards are changing, and so I always felt like every year that passed, I thought, yeah, next year I'm going to be a pro at this. I'm going to have so much more confidence at the start of the year. And some of that was true, but you still run into the same issues that you run year one sometimes, right? Because your students change, because now all of a sudden, technology is different. The challenges that I faced when I started teaching 12, 13 years ago, my biggest concern was that kids had Clash of Clans on their phones and they were trying to play a video game, while I was trying to deliver instruction. Now, kids could be coding and creating applications on their phones while I'm trying to deliver instruction. It's a different world. And so that uncertainty principle has applied for decades before, and it will apply for decades to come. Uh, One other principle that frequently comes up in conversations, in these mentorship conversations, um, is this idea of smooth speed. And I think that as a new teacher, we are often thinking we got to figure out how to move as quickly as possible and how to be able, if I have a good idea, I want it to get implemented right away. And oftentimes, what ends up happening is we rush through things, right? And we there's an expression called we build the plane as we're flying it. And that ultimately can lead to some problems. And I think one of the one expression that I heard recently that I really like is this idea of slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So not necessarily moving slow all the time, but moving at an appropriate pace, whether that's your lesson planning, whether that's your grading, your interactions with your colleagues, your department meetings, feeling like you're in control of time versus you're just trying to get to the next thing. So maybe talk a little about that, kind of the battle against time and feeling like you're chasing the day versus versus the opposite, trying to feel like you're in control of the time that we all have.
Yeah, I think I definitely am guilty of what you mentioned first, like wanting my ideas to be implemented right away. Um, because like I have an idea of how I want things to go. Um, it's definitely been a work in progress for me to learn how to. So for context, my planning team for both physics and for chemistry were pretty lockstep. And so with that, there's a lot of collaboration, but then there's also a lot of me having to rely on other people and like seeing their ideas through, and working on the same schedule and timing as them. So I think that like this idea of smooth speed for me feels like thinking about longevity and thinking about things over a longer period of time rather than just, okay, this is the week that I have to get all these things done, or this is the lesson, this is the unit that I have to do all these things. But I think just like that long term thinking of, okay, maybe I'm only gonna get to change this one learning activity for this week, and that's okay because that's a small change that I can make. But if I really am planning on staying in this profession for longer, I have plenty of time to continue doing it. Um, and I think that that makes me able to the ideas that I do get to implement, like really flush those ideas out, and spend a little bit more time and thought into them rather than just trying to pump out a bunch of stuff that's high quality. Um, yeah, does that like is that kind of like what the
Yeah, well, and
what it's
just
talking about?
backwards planning, right? The idea
Yes.
of thinking, not necessarily thinking, all right, here's my deadline. It's self-imposed, and by the end of this week, I have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why? Right? Why by the end of this week? Why not give yourself some more time? Who is holding you accountable for this? From an administrator lens, oftentimes I think teachers are thinking, I need to continuously be innovative or I'm not going to prove my worth,
Mm-hmm.
especially as a newer teacher when you're trying to make sure, you keep coming back year after year. But I think what is easy to forget, going back to how we started our conversation today, is that what makes good teachers is not how frequently they innovate or how experts they are at their craft or their content. It's about relationships. The relationships that you're able to form with your students, your ability to see them as human beings needs, with diverse talents, and to build off of that. Those are the teachers that sustain a career because what keeps you coming back is not the appetite for, I got to develop my perfect chemistry lesson. It's, oh man, I really want to see Joey get to the finish line here, right? Not just pass my class, but I want to go to his graduation. All of those little things are what keep us in the profession because it sure as heck isn't the pay.
Yeah.
So that's what needs to nurture teacher sustainability. And I think for someone in their second year of teaching to begin our conversation today the way that you did about those relationships being what you consider a success, uh, I have to tell you, Ivan, but you might be committed for your entire life in this profession because your head is in the right place. Your head and your heart are in the right place. So big kudos to you.
Thank you.
And in the few minutes we have remaining, one other principle that I'm curious to get your feedback on is this idea of taking healthy risks. Not a fan of people who claim that you always have to be taking risks or that you may have heard the expression fail forward. I think that risks are important as long as they can be measured, right? You have to be able to, almost like a gamble. What is it that you're willing to lose? And how does that compare to what you may gain from taking a healthy risks? Oftentimes, I think when teachers build up frustrations, they use this idea of I had to take a risk to do something that's a little too outlandish, right? Whether maybe it's speak up at a staff meeting to definitely feel like you're heard in a moment that maybe your idea was not ready to be heard. And all of a sudden you've taken a good idea that's in your head, but the manner in which you presented it was not conducive to people listening to you, right? Versus feeling like, man, maybe if I crafted a well thought out email, a phone call, if I created the situations in which my idea might find fertile ground, maybe that's better than the risk that I took by launching my thought out there when people may not have been ready to hear it. So, curious how you feel about that idea of taking not just risks, but healthy risks, especially as a newer teacher.
I think that um, as somebody who has a lot of ideas fresh from your credentialing program, you're just so excited to see it all happen in real life. And I think at times that kind of comes with being a little impulsive about when to share your ideas or like what you want to change and stuff like that. Um, I have an example of this. Like when I was in my student teaching year, I decided to completely revamp the entire stoichiometry unit with my mentor teacher, and I did
Mm-hmm.
that as my NTPA
Wow.
unit. And the amount of stress that that caused me, like I wasn't even thinking about like what I would be losing by doing all of this. I was just thinking, okay, what could the reward be? And I think that that actually turned out to be a unit that I thought went okay, but was it as good as I had imagined? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I had just stopped to think like, what am I going to be losing, which was like a lot of my time, a lot of my brain power, a lot of the certainty. I had never taught stoichiometry before. That came with like changing all of these things at once. I think that I could have made more calculated risks that maybe could have been more measurable, like you're saying. Like, let's say I change this one lesson. Okay, let me now monitor this one lesson instead of, okay, I changed the whole unit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that that really speaks to me as somebody who struggles with impulsivity and, like just wanting to get things done now. Um, yeah, and I think that that also kind of speaks to my practice this year because I will definitely say, like, I am still very excited to change things and I'm very excited to make things better. But I'm also like, okay, is it worth it to take on this whole undertaking when it might come at the expense of me planning out this other lesson? Or when it comes at the expense of my coworker who really likes this idea and wants to continue doing it? Like, is it okay for me to just interject and say, like, no, I want to do this way when it might come, like, there might be other things that I'm losing? So I think I'm definitely thinking more before I speak up and before I do things like that. And honestly, I never thought about that like being. I never thought about that concept being like, I guess putting like a label or a word on it. So I think that that actually makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, kind of structuring it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I think even just taking the time to think about that, right? Like, what is it that I'm feeling? Why am I feeling it this way? And it's taken me decades to narrow it down to principles, but ultimately, they're things that I feel apply to most people, both new veteran teachers and not just teaching in other professions. These are all kind of basic communication principles that ultimately affect one, our own sanity, and two, our efficacy at work, no matter the industry. As we come to a close here, Ivan, I like to finish up these podcasts by asking folks, and in your context, I'm going to kind of personalize the question a bit. Say you were talking to, let's fast forward 6 months, and you're talking to a teacher, first year teacher in October, first time on their own, and they're coming to you and they're like, hey, it's been a month and a half and I don't think this profession is for me. What are one or two sentences that you might share with the teacher to keep them motivated and keep them pushing through in their profession?
It's a really good question. Let me think about what I would have wanted to hear. I think something that I would tell them is like, first of all, you're not crazy for feeling this way, um, because this profession can be a lot, and that a lot of people definitely feel like that. And I also will encourage them and say, it's totally okay to take a step back. You're not going to get fired if you take a step back right now. You're not going to um, lose your classroom to chaos if you take one step back. And just focus on like what are the things that you can do right now that will move you forward. And sorry, this is not really two sentences, but what are the things you can do to move you forward, and what are the things that brought you joy initially, and can you try to gravitate more towards that right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, you're an expert mentor, Ivan. I need you as a mentor for Teacher Guard.
Thank you.
Ivan Lee, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your insight, and thank you for the work that you're doing in the classroom. Like I said, your head and your heart, based just on the conversation that we had today, are exactly where they need to be. So, kudos to you. Keep on doing the good work, and appreciate you being on today.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it and found it helpful to your teaching journey, please don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube or through your favorite podcast platform. We also appreciate any and all reviews or comments you leave. Thank you for joining us today, and tune in next week for our next episode.